Hello, Mr. Geislard here, and we're going to take a look at the law of sines in this video. The first thing you need to do is look at the formula for the law of sines. The law of sines states that the sine of A over A is equal to the sine of B over B, which is equal to the sine of C over C. Now, when we label triangles, we label the vertices, or the corners of the triangles, with capital letters. In this case, we label them with A, B, and C. The side opposite of angle A is called little a, the side opposite of angle C is called little c, and the side opposite of angle B is called little b. You can set up the ratio. Now, this equation has three different things in it, but you'll never use it with all three at once. What you do is you choose any two of them. So you could say the sine of A over A is equal to the sine of B over B, or you could say the sine of B over B is equal to the sine of C over C, or you could say the sine of A over A is equal to the sine of C over C. So it's just a matter of setting up the proportion based on the information that you are given. But the important thing is that you label the angles and the sides correctly so that you can set up the proportions correctly. And in the next couple of minutes, I will show you how to do that. Okay, let's take a look at this one. The directions say to solve the triangle. What solving the triangle means is finding all the missing angles and missing sides. Before I do anything, I want to label the sides based on the angles that are given. So if we start with angle B, the side opposite of angle B is little b. The side opposite of angle C is little c, and the side opposite of angle A is little a. So we have those marked off there. Now, I'm just going to erase these lines like that. So now we have A, B, and C. So let's set up an equation using the law of sines. So remember, the law of sines just say the sine of A over A is equal to the sine of B over B, which is equal to the sine of C over C. Now, with this, notice that I have angle B and side B. That means I'm going to have to use those numbers. So I'm going to do the sine of B over B equals. Now, I'm not given either angle A or side A, so I can't find that yet. But I am given angle C, so that means I can find C. So that will be the sine of C over C. So now let's go ahead and put in some numbers. So this will be the sine of 100 over 18 is equal to the sine of 30 over C. So once we have that, we can just cross multiply. So that's going to give me C times the sine of 100 is equal to 18 times the sine of 30. So if we divide by the sine of 100, divide by the sine of 100, I will end up with C is equal to 9.14 when you round it to the nearest hundredth. So that means that this is 9.14. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually find angle A. Well, to find angle A, it's pretty straightforward. We know that there are 180 degrees in a triangle. So if I just take 180 and I subtract the other two angles, so that's 130. So I'm going to subtract 130, so that's going to be 50. So angle A is 50. I didn't need to use the law of sines to find that angle because I already knew two of them. I can just find the angle by subtracting from 180. So now that we know angle A, I can set up another equation for the law of sines. So now I'm going to do the sine of A over A is equal to the sine of B over B. So that's going to be the sine of 50 over A is equal to the sine of 100 over 18. So again, we're going to cross multiply, and I'm just going to pull that up here, and that will be A times the sine of 100 is equal to 18 times the sine of 50. So we divide by sine 100, divide by the sine of 100, and we end up with A is equal to 14. It's actually 14.00 something, but we'll just call it 14. Now, one other thing I want you to know. Notice that the sides do not match up with what it looks like as far as the length goes. In other words, in this diagram, CB looks shorter than AB. But notice the side, if we find the answer, is bigger there than it is there. You can never assume that pictures are drawn to scale. Always assume that they are not drawn to scale unless it specifically says that they are. Okay, here we're going to solve a triangle again. Notice in this case, though, I'm only given one angle. I'm not given two angles. So we're still going to end up using the law of sines. So I'm still going to end up with the sine of A over A is equal to the sine of B over B, which is equal to the sine of C over C. Now, let's first label our sides. So again, if this is B, this side is opposite of that, so that's little b. Angle A, the side opposite little a, the angle C, the side opposite of that is little c. So now looking at this diagram, I can find angle C because I know side C, and again we have B and B. So it's going to be the sine of B over B is equal to the sine of C over C. When we plug in our numbers, we're going to get the sine of 100 over 18 is equal to the sine of C over 13. Now, I'm going to multiply both sides by 13, and that will cancel out there. So now I have 13 times the sine of 100 over 18 is equal to is equal to the sine of C. Now, in your calculator, make sure you close the parentheses, and I'm even going to put that in red here. Make sure you close these parentheses before you do the division. So when you put this into your calculator here, you should end up with a number of about 0.71125 is equal to the sine of C. Now, whenever you're doing these numbers, whenever you're trying to do the angle, to do the inverse, you should always go out at least 4 decimal places or maybe 5. Then what you're going to want to do now is you have to do the inverse sine. So you hit second in sine, do the inverse sine of 0.71125, and that will be your answer for the angle C. Now, in most of these questions, I'm going to ask you to round it to the nearest whole number, which in this case would round to 45. It would be 45.3367 is equal to C. So what I want you to do is round that to the nearest whole number. So we'll say 45 is equal to the measure of angle C. So C is going to be 45. Now, I can find angle A just by subtracting. So again, to find angle A, we have 180 degrees minus 145, which is going to be 35. So now angle A is 35 degrees. Now I can use the law of sines again. To use the law of sines now, it'll look something like this. The sine of A over A is equal to the sine of B over B. So I'm looking at the sine of 35 over A is equal to the sine of 100 over 18. Now let's cross multiply. And let me just kind of draw this like this. So if we cross multiply, we're going to get A times the sine of 100 is equal to 18 times the sine of 35, divide by the sine of 100, and we end up with A is equal to about 10.48. So now, in this one, we had to use the inverse sine because we had to find the measure of an angle first. So if you're only given one angle, again, if you're only given one angle, eventually you're going to have to do the inverse sine in order to solve for the missing angle. Okay, and here's the last example. Again, it's very similar to the other one, so I'm going to kind of go through this one quickly. Now, in this case, we're given two angles. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is find angle A. So I just have to do 180 minus 130, and that will be 50. So that angle is 50 there. Now, again, this is side B, this is side C, this is side A. So if we did the sine of A over A, I would do the sine of 50 over 10 is equal to the sine of 100 over B. Now notice I didn't write down the sine of A over A and the sine of B over B, which is fine because we know what it is. It's the sine of the angle over its opposite side. The angles won't always be A, B, and C. They could be anything. So we're just going to be plugging in those numbers. So now that we do this, we're going to cross multiply. And we get 10 times the sine of 100 is equal to B times the sine of 50. So we divide by the sine of 50. And we end up with B is equal to 12.86 when rounded to the nearest hundredth. So now in order to find C, I'm going to start it again with the sine of 50 over 10 is equal to the sine of 30 over C. When we cross multiply, we get 10 times the sine of 30 is equal to C times the sine of 50. Divide by the sine of 50. And we end up with C is equal to 6.53. So that is what we're looking at for the law of sines, and I hope that was helpful.